Hi there, it's Kevin with the Rogue Market, here with the discussion about the Throne of Eldraine Brawl decks. There's a lot of misconception going around the internet, as well as the people not understanding exactly what release allocation means. And I'm here to clear that up as a WPN member, as a local game store owner. Many may know that I own or co-own the store in Richfield, Utah called Gone Rogue Games. And we are a mid-sized store. So we're not a small store, we're not a large store. We're kind of that mid-sized store. We get your normal 30 plus people at pre-releases and run F&Ms and other events and have a decent turnout for all of those. So just to give you some perspective of where I'm coming from, I've been in the business now for 4 years. So have plenty of distributors I talk to, plenty of contacts at Wizards I talk to. So I feel like I am a little bit of an authority when I'm talking about the Throne of Eldraine numbers and what I expect to see based upon the kind of the allocations in the past and what that actually translated to open orders. So let's talk about that before we really talk about the contents of the Throne of Eldraine Brawl deck. So there's two different types of stores that sell Magic the Gathering. There are just your everyday brick and mortar stores that aren't associated with the WPN, and there are WPN-based local game stores. Now, there are some perks to being a WPN member, and there are also some restrictions. The first one that stops stores from becoming WPN is they don't want to commit retail space to play space. You have to commit a good chunk of your space. My store, 2 of the 3 rooms are dedicated toward play space to house those 30 players. Like, if I'm reporting that I have 30 players, I better have 30 players that I can actually house. And that's kind of the cap of Gone Rogue Games here in Richfield, Utah. We can comfortably seat about 30 people. So we've I think our largest tournament's been like 35. We've had people playing in the hall at that point. It wasn't very comfortable. That's kind of our occupancy there. So a lot of stores, like Alpha Investments, like some other ones, are not WPN because they don't think that the perks of being WPN outweigh having to put the play space up and lose that for retail space. Or you also have to have convenient hours. You have to do a certain amount of tournaments per month. There's a lot of things that you have to do to become WPN. One of the parts of WPN, though, is you do get what's called release and pre-release allocations. Now, a lot of people are freaking out about Throne of Eldraine Brawl decks because the release allocation is very, very small. But I have a big but here. To me, it isn't that far out of the ordinary. The release numbers and pre-release numbers for these sorts of products have been dismally low in the past. So the thing that I can compare this to is Planeswalker decks. I only get 4 Planeswalker decks, so 4 displays of Planeswalker decks comparatively to the 2 Brawl decks that we're getting. So it's 50% less than the Planeswalker decks. However, Planeswalker decks, after they go from release allocation to open orders, that's when the WPN or the non-WPN stores can actually order them, have been substantially high. The same things with guild kits. Guild kits was another one that was very, very low for the release allocation for the guild kits, but after release allocation was over and it went to open orders, there were plenty of guild kits that were able to be purchased. So that's where I'm kind of thinking that the Brawl decks are going to go. And a lot of people are freaking out about this. They keep hearing the 2 number. Stores only get 2 displays of Brawl decks. Yes, that is for release allocation. That is the WPN perk, and then they will go on their normal open orders. Commander was the same thing. I think we got 8 displays of Commander decks. They went on release allocation, then we were able to order more once it went to open order. Funny thing about that real quick while I'm talking about Commander, from one of my distributors called me up, asked me if I'd want to buy more Commander because there were stores that had not paid or had canceled their orders for the Commander decks when they saw the contents of the Brawl deck. So keep that in mind about Commander 2019. It has had some pretty dismal sales now with this secondary small stocking. There will be a large stock of the Commander 2019 in mid-October. That has been confirmed by distributors and the Wizards of the Coast themselves. That's when the bulk of the content that is going to go on the Walmart and the Target shelves for the Christmas season, as well as fill all of the local game stores back up to capacity. Those are more for like the Christmas time shopping is what they decided to do with the Commander. So that seems to be their new playbook, is to hype up sets due to scarcity. So they're going to have this Nintendo like, we're only going to sell a certain amount of copies for these release allocations. We're going to make people panic buy and caused this hype that, oh, we couldn't get this. I better pull the trigger the next time it comes out. And they're planning on that for Commander 2019 in October. And I think it's going to backfire on them because I think no one's going to want it by then when they see the contents of, like, we have collector's editions coming out, we have Brawl coming out, I'm sure there will be some holiday products coming out. And I think Wizards of the Coast is definitely misguided with this strategy. I think that this is kicking them rather than or rather than helping them. And one of the examples that I like to say, once again, going back to the allocations, WPN stores, I think we got 20 Gideon spellbooks for our allocation from our distributors, or from Wizards of the Coast for being a WPN member. We were only able to get 20. We sold out of those very quickly. A few weeks later, after the Gideon spellbooks went from release allocation to open order, I was able to order hundreds of Gideon spellbooks. Let me repeat that. Hundreds of Gideon spellbooks. This was, again, a product that was very hard to come by on the week of a release that then was completely just flooded the market. Same can be said about now Core 2019 bundles. It was another thing. I could only get 8 Core 2019 or Core 2020, bundles for my allocation for release. So that means I only had 8 to sell in my store, and now I can get bundles galore. I could order a warehouse full of bundles if I wanted to. Modern Horizons, very similar. Modern Horizons only had I think I was able to get 20, it's like 24 Modern Horizons, and this week, I'm doing an order that is higher than the release allocation that I was able to do with Modern Horizons. So plenty of stock for Modern Horizons. Release allocation means very, very little in today's day and age. So back to Throne of Eldraine Brawl decks. It's exactly where I'm thinking that Throne of Eldraine Brawl decks are headed. This is to create that initial hype for the decks, to have this initial scarcity so everyone pulls the trigger the second time they are released. And I'm thinking that these are going to be a widely available product. Now, I could be wrong. I've been wrong in the past about things that have been very surprising with them having lower numbers than I thought with these particular specialty sets. However, I don't see this with Brawl. I'm thinking they really want to push Brawl. They pushed on Arena. They want to get it going at the local game store scene. So I doubt that the supply of these is going to be low. I think the supply is going to be very similar to guild kits and the Planeswalker decks that are usually very, very easy to come by during the lifespan of that set. And usually months after that set, you can still get the various decks. These also tend to be more of the print-to-demand type products. So some of the Planeswalker decks are harder to come by. I think Ixalan was one of them because they sold so dismally that they didn't do a reprinting of them. Core 2019 is another one. And the initial wave was all the waves they got. They didn't do a reorder of them. And those are actually becoming quite rare comparatively to some of the Planeswalker decks that did sell very well, like the Dominaria ones. I believe I can still get Dominaria ones. That's one of the easier way to get Dominaria packs, actually, is because they did do a refulfillment on those Planeswalker decks. The same can be said for guild kits. Guild kits had their initial wave 1, and then they had some wave 2s and 3s to supplement the demand for those products, and now they've cut those off because the demand has stopped. So that is how they kind of do this in today's day and age with Wizards of the Coast numbers. Now, Wizards of the Coast will not give their numbers, their print numbers. In fact, I did reach out to Wizards of the Coast and got this condescending message back that we don't discuss print numbers. I wasn't asking for print numbers. I was just wanted to get some clarification that Throne of Eldraine Brawl decks would be handled the same way that Planeswalker decks and whatnot is handled. So if anything is to be said about Wizards of the Coast, I wish they'd have better communication with their strategic partners, meaning their distributors and their WPN stores. One of the worst things that was about Commander 2020 is my distributors didn't even know that they were receiving a second wave of Commander decks until it showed up on their doorstep. So that's kind of lack of communication between both Wizards of the Coast, their distributors, and their WPN partners. So something needs to happen in the culture at Wizards of the Coast. Wizards of the Coast has been notorious for hiring people that are not capable of doing their jobs, checking out those diversity slots rather than getting talent, and people that are competent. That's a whole another can of worms. It tends to tick people off when I talk about it, but it is what it is. I mean, that's my as a WPN store, it's been miserable to deal with my contacts at Wizards of the Coast. They are just horrible to deal with, to even buy and sell their products. So anyway, again, another rant for another day. Let's talk about Brawl. So Brawl has had quite the hype surrounding it. It's because the EV is actually pretty good. Now, the 75 is not something that translates well over to exactly what's in it, because there are some cards in here that are overblown at the moment. But we do have the Arcane Signet that is holding strong. Now it's a common, but a common doesn't really mean anything because there's one of these per Brawl decks. There's one rare per Brawl deck as well, or one mythic per Brawl deck. So they could have put this at any rarity. Usually on these supplemental products like Commander and Brawl, they put commons when they're in multiple decks, and in this case, Arcane Signet is in every deck, and is going for a $20 price tag, and I see it settling around the, I would say $13 to $18 mark is where I think the Arcane Signets are going to settle. Remember, there are millions of Commander decks that now need to pick up an Arcane Signet. If you look at even cards like Star Compass, or Mind Stone, or I'm trying to think of some other ones, that the one that comes in with 3 counters that comes to play tap charge counters. All of those see heavy amount of play in Commander, and Arcane Signet is just strictly better than all of them. So it's going to be kind of how Command Tower was when it first was printed, where it's going to have a ton of initial demand to supplement all of the Commander decks in existence that need to now put an Arcane Signet. So I'm thinking this card does stay arbitrarily high. It's going to hold the value of the Brawl decks, and it's going to make sure that these sell very well. When you actually pick up a Brawl deck and take the Arcane Signet and then sell the rest of the contents, I think the rest of the contents are where the cards are going to fall in value. I have a hard time seeing any card in these sets go above the $4 mark is where I'm giving kind of the threshold for. And there's particular ones that were reprints that I think are going to get crushed. One being the Risen Reef in this deck is going to get crushed. And this is assuming there is going to be the high supply to meet this initial demand. I had a few patrons that unloaded their Smothering Tithes, and a few other patrons argue with them that, well, Smothering Tithes just goes up, 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 even if since it's getting a reprint in this particular set. It should only have a stabilizing factor, not a decreasing factor of it. And I disagree. I think that these will be very, very highly in print. If they're selling well, I don't put it past Wizards of the Coast to continue to print them. Remember, these are all cards that are in standard. They usually like to keep their standard supply very, very high. And if they're selling well, of course, this is something to definitely boost up their Q4 earnings and say, hey, look at our sales, we're great. And this was they actually do need a knock out of the park product. A few of their products have been quite lackluster. They had the just knock out of the park set in the War of the Spark, and then the sales really started to fall off. They expected War of the Spark to be like Dominaria, to continue to sell. Now War of the Spark is being fire sold about, I can get it from one distributor for about $75. That's a lot cheaper than other booster boxes, like $8 cheaper. So you can tell that the War of the Spark and Core 2020 are not selling to where Wizards of the Coast expected them to sell. So I think Brawl decks will be the one that they're going to want to push out and continue to get a lot of good sales and boost those Q4 earnings. So anyway, let's take a look through these decks of rare cards that I think are going to be crushed. We have the Steelbane Hydra, which is new to this. I think, yes, it's only in this particular. It's not in the set, I don't believe. I could be wrong here, but it enters the battlefield with X+1/+1 counters. You can remove a +1 counter, destroy an artifact for 3 mana. We have cards like this that have existed in the past. This one, though, has been able to, you can put a lot of counters on initially and use it just to knock down artifacts. Yeah, a lot of Commander decks are going to want it, but I think this settles around the $2 mark. Incubation Druid is one that I think does get crushed from this particular printing. And then if you look, there's not a lot of other cards in this deck that have any sort of value. We have Tome of Legends, which is also a new card. I believe Tome of Legends, though, is in every deck as well. Funny how they made this one a rare. Let's see if Tome of Legends is in all of the decks. No, okay, I guess it's not. I thought it was in more than one, though. Maybe I'm just off here. All right, I guess it's just in that one. For some reason, I just think it is in more of than just the Wild Bounty deck. So I guess that is how they do the rarity of these sets is if it's in one deck, it's a rare. If it's in multiple decks, it's an uncommon. If it's in all decks, it's a common. So the Arcane Signet, all of them. Again, not a lot of value in here except for the Shockland. So every one of these decks, smartly done. We can actually give kudos to Gavin Verhey this time because a lot of the stuff that has come out of Gavin Verhey lately has been, awkward to say the least and just misguided to say the most, where, lots of reprint equity in the Commander 2019 when there actually wasn't much equity whatsoever. This one, they're not taking any risks. They're putting Shocklands in every set. This is another reason why I think the rest of the cards in this set cannot hold that above $5 price tag because they are going to have all the value in the Arcane Signet and in the Shocklands. So where do I see Shocklands? I do see Shocklands getting crushed. They probably will take if this isn't a high supply, take a 50% decrease. The good news about it is they survive rotation, and Guilds of Ravnica and Ravnica Allegiance currently are not positive EV, meaning that no one is opening those sets to actually crack the EV, and the EV was actually held in Shocklands. So that's a bad news for Guilds of Ravnica and Ravnica Allegiance. So I'm thinking that could actually go for like Hallowed Fountains and other Shocklands for holding their value, is there's not going to be much more of those sets opened. There will be a ton of the Brawl decks, but not much of those particular sets open. If we go on to the next one, you can see there are some $5 cards, like the Silvering Squadron. That's definitely one that's going to get crushed. I don't think it's that great of a commander card. Just put a 2/2 White Knight creature token every time it attacks for each opponent. Kind of lackluster. This is going to be a card that's going to be, in my opinion, close to the bulk range after the dust settles. But this one, again, is holding all the value with the Arcane Signet and with the Godless Shrine. So we have another $10 card in the form of this Knight's Charge, another card that definitely will get crushed because of the Shockland and the Arcane Signet holding the value. Same thing can be said about this next deck. We got a $5 card with the Thorn Mammoth, but the Arcane Signet and the Stomping Grounds is going to be the all the value that's going to be held in the set. And then we go on to the Fairy Schemes, which also has the Watery Grave and a Smothering Tithe. So the card contents in this one are going to be even more hard to hold that value of even $2 to $3 at this point when they have another $10 card in the form of Smothering Tithe that's contained in this. So Arcane Signet, Smothering Tithe, and the Water Grave are going to hold a value. So just a TLDR of where I'm going with this Brawl deck. There's two ways this could go. If this is a very limited supply set, yes, it won't affect the price of the Shocklands. It won't affect the price of the Smothering Tithe. The Arcane Signets will be $40 cards. You won't be able to find these in even Walmarts or Targets because people will just go in and buy them up and piece them out for singles. And they're gonna have a disaster PR wise where people actually want these and can't get them. Local game stores will jack up the price of it. People hate their local game stores for wanting to make a buck, which is absolutely ludicrous. Blah blah blah. Because I know most of you are financially minded that actually watch this channel. If I were to post this on my main channel, the Rogue Deck Builder, I would get the comments like talking about how it's unethical for a store to jack up the price. Well, this is what happens. Like I currently increased the price of my 2018 commanders because I can't order them anymore, and they were $40 and I bumped them up to $50. What that does is though it actually guarantees a buyer that actually wants the product rather than a buyer that will just piece it out. So if I keep all of my costs arbitrarily low, all I'm going to get is someone that's going to break them down and sell them on eBay or buy them directly from me and sell them at eBay. So why don't I make that buck rather than, any old jack coming in and actually doing that? And that's where people are just absolutely crazy when it comes to ethics of the only thing that's ethical is making a buck. Everyone should be trying to make a dollar. I mean, I think, what is that called? Pareto's equilibrium, where both the consumer and the producer come to this this perfect equilibrium of where the value actually lies. Neither one of the parties wants to get ripped off. So where does rip off lie? It lies in the fact it was the seller happy with the sale and the purchaser happy with the purchase, and neither one of them can budge at that point. And that's typically with a free market where we're trying to actually strive for. And even if Brawl decks actually do get bumped up, I don't think the consumer actually has that argument that, hey, these are supposed to be this amount of money. Well, no. If again, your local Timmy is not going to be able to get this product if it has $75 worth of value. All of the spikes are going to come in. The finance spikes are going to come in to the game store that's selling them for $20 and buy them all up and then flip them on eBay. So Timmy's not going to get a chance anyway, unless the local game store decides to divvy them out and allow one-ofs to everyone. Then the spikes just go to all the Timmys and say, hey, I'll pay you $25 to buy the $20. Here, make $5. I'll pay you $25 to buy the $20 product, and they get them anyway. I mean, again, the only ethics you should have is to your wallet. That's the whole thing, and the game store should be just as ruthless as the consumer. It's just weird, this culture we have in Magic the Gathering about how everyone wants to hate the seller for everything, and all these ethics when it comes to selling. But anyway, that's again another rant for another day. TLDR, Throne of Eldraine Brawl decks. Yes, it's very limited for the release allocation. That doesn't really mean anything, as everything is virtually very low. I get 8 bundles again. 8 bundles is all I get for release. That's it for my store. 8 bundles to sell. So I don't think that the bundles are going to be are going to be for the foreseeable future going to be low supply. They're going to release these in high quantities after that allocation has expired. Anyway, this has been Kevin with the Rogue Market. Interested in your comments in the comment section below. If you own a store yourself, let me know your thoughts on this. If your numbers are kind of similar to mine, it's always good to discuss these things to know, kind of where we sit with different distributors and WPN and what's worth it and what's not. Anyway, looking for those comments in the comment section below. Thanks for watching.